Bruno Fernandes versus Adam Nunn. Everyone knows Bruno Fernandes loves to moan. Wait, hold up, that came out weird. But you get what I mean. In 2023, during that 7-0 match against Liverpool, United were already falling apart, and Bruno looked like he'd rather be on the team bus. But then came the moment people still talk about. The moment he walked past assistant referee Adam Nunn and gave him this little shove in the back. It was not a massive push, but it was enough for everyone watching to go, wait, did he just shove the linesman? The cameras caught it from every angle, and Twitter went into meltdown. Rival fans were demanding lifetime bans, while United fans were pretending it was just light contact. Even Gary Neville, who usually goes easy on his United mates, called it embarrassing. And honestly it was. You're the captain of Manchester United, and instead of rallying the team when you're getting hammered 7-0, you're sulking and pushing an assistant ref. That's not leadership, that's totally unprofessional. The FA reviewed it afterwards but decided not to punish him further since the officials had seen it. Still, the damage to his reputation was done. To this day, people still drop the Bruno push whenever he starts shouting at refs again. And if Bruno was embarrassing in that moment, this next guy was absolutely shameless in his. Cristiano Ronaldo versus Ricardo de Burgos Bengoechea. Now, Cristiano Ronaldo is one of the greatest footballers ever, no debate there, but the man also has a flair for the dramatic, and in the 2017 Spanish Super Cup against Barcelona, he gave us a golden moment. He scored, whipped his shirt off, got booked, then a few minutes later he dived for a penalty that the referee, Ricardo de Burgos Bengoechea, didn't buy. He received his second yellow, then a red card, and bro completely lost it. Instead of storming off like most players, Ronaldo marched straight up to the referee and shoved him in the back. But he didn't go scot-free. La Liga came down hard, giving him a 5-match ban, and suddenly Real Madrid had to start the season without their main man because he couldn't keep his hands to himself. The crazy part is that his shove probably got replayed as much as his goal that night. Fans still argue over whether the ban was too harsh, but the reality is that Ronaldo literally put his hands on the referee. You could score 60 goals in a season, but push a ref once, and that's the clip fans never forget. Speaking of stars who couldn't resist clashing with refs, Neymar's got a whole highlight reel of his own. Neymar versus Roberto Tobar. Neymar and drama are basically inseparable, but one of his wildest clashes with a ref came in Brazil's World Cup qualifier against Colombia in 2021. The game was already messy, Colombia were already playing dirty, and Neymar was fuming because nothing was going his way. Then he squared up to Roberto Tobar. It turned into this full chest-to-chest standoff with Neymar screaming in his face, Tobar not backing down, and the cameras loving every second. For a moment, it even looked like Neymar was going to barge him. He only got a yellow for dissent, but you could tell this wasn't the usual whiny protest. He was actually furious. After the match, he didn't let it go either. He straight up called Tobar arrogant and disrespectful, saying a guy like that shouldn't even be a referee at a Copa America semi-final. And here's the twist. Neymar didn't take the hit this time. The ref did. CONMEBOL reviewed the game and slapped Tobar with an indefinite suspension. Their verdict was that he'd made serious errors that risked losing control of the match, especially by not properly punishing Neymar or Juan Cuadrado in the heat of that bust-up. So instead of the usual Neymar headlines, the referee ended up paying the bigger price. Then we have Luis Suarez versus Iglesias Villanueva. Luis Suarez has never exactly been known for keeping things PG on the pitch. Bro is either biting defenders, diving, or constantly complaining. And in 2017, during a La Liga match with Valencia, he did it again. Lionel Messi scored what looked like a perfectly good goal. The ball clearly crossed the line, but the officials somehow missed it, and bam, Suarez completely lost his mind. He went straight to the assistant referee, Iglesias Villanueva, and unloaded a stream of insults that made it into the Spanish press. The story goes that he actually called him a effing midget, which is outrageous even by Suarez's standards. He raged, Messi raged, and even Barcelona's fans were in disbelief that the goal wasn't given. But Suarez's meltdown became the headline. The linesman probably had no idea what hit him. What makes this incident so memorable is that it perfectly sums up Suarez's career. For every brilliant goal or moment of genius, there's always chaos around the corner. He's the type of player who can destroy a whole team's defensive strategy and still somehow pick a fight with the assistant ref in the same match. Next up, let's talk about Paulo Di Canio versus Paul Alcock. You know how some footballers just have that energy where you think, yeah, he could snap at any moment? That was Paulo Di Canio every single week. The man could be brilliant one second and a walking red card the next. And in 1998, against Arsenal, he gave us one of the wildest referee moments in Premier League history. He got sent off, no surprises there, but instead of just sulking off the pitch like a normal person, he shoved referee Paul Alcock square in the chest. And in that moment, Alcock went down like he'd been hit with prime Mike Tyson's right hand. Honestly, the fall was so dramatic that it deserves its own Oscar nomination. Canio, of course, got an 11-match ban, and it just added to his reputation as football's resident nutcase. The funniest part is that years later, he won a FIFA Fair Play award for catching a ball instead of scoring when a goalkeeper was injured. Dude went from public enemy number one to Mr. Sportsmanship. And speaking of referees being on the receiving end of player frustration, let's jump to a guy who took his anger a bit too far. William Ribeiro versus Rodrigo Crivellaro. Brazil has given us samba football, Ronaldinho, and some of the greatest entertainers ever. But it also gave us William Ribeiro deciding that if you can't dribble past a ref, just 2-foot him instead. This happened in 2021 during a third division match, and it's genuinely one of the darkest moments you'll ever see on a pitch. Ribeiro didn't just argue, didn't just shove, but he actually kicked referee Rodrigo Crivellaro in the head while he was on the ground. Straight red, obviously, but this wasn't just football disciplinary stuff. The man was arrested on the pitch, like literally handcuffed and all. Crivellaro had to be taken to the hospital, and the match was abandoned. This wasn't even one of those heat-of-the-moment shoulder bumps or a bit of shouting. This was pure madness. And the craziest part, Ribeiro tried to claim he was being treated unfairly, like kicking the ref was somehow the logical solution. That incident made headlines worldwide, and honestly, it reminded everyone how lucky we are that most player-ref fights don't go anywhere near that level. Usually, it's just chest-thumping and swear words. Which takes us to a guy who loves exactly that kind of drama. Diego Costa versus Jesus Gil Manzano. If Paolo Di Canio was the king of Premier League meltdowns, then Diego Costa is the undisputed master of La Liga chaos. Costa doesn't just argue with defenders, he argues with ball boys, he argues with corner flags, and of course he argues with referees. But in 2019, against Barcelona, he crossed the line with Jesus Gil Manzano. Costa completely lost his head and launched into a stream of Spanish insults that were so bad, the referee actually put them word for word in his match report. That's how offensive it was. But Costa didn't stop there. He grabbed Gil Manzano by the arm while still shouting in his face, like some unhinged nightclub bouncer who's not letting you leave. He got a red card, no debate, and then an 8-game ban. What makes it even funnier is that Atletico Madrid were actually in the game at that point, but Costa managed to torpedo his own team's chances because he couldn't keep his mouth shut for 5 seconds. Classic Costa. And since we're on the topic of hot-headed strikers, let's talk about one who turned his meltdown into one of the most iconic Premier League bans in recent years. Alexander Mitrovic versus Chris Kavanagh. Fulham fans love Alexander Mitrovic because he plays like he's got unfinished business with every defender he's ever faced. But in 2023, during an FA Cup quarter-final against Manchester United, he decided to add referees to his hit list. Fulham were actually playing really well, but then Willian got sent off for a handball and Mitrovic completely lost it. He ran straight up to referee Chris Kavanagh, screamed in his face, and then shoved him. It wasn't a little tap either. It was the type of shove you give when someone skips you in a queue and you've had a bad day. Kavanagh showed him the red card immediately, but Mitrovic didn't stop. He had to be dragged away while still raging, and you just knew the FA wasn't going to let that slide. He ended up with an 8-game ban, which was basically Fulham's season gone in one shove. And the irony? Mitrovic is now in Saudi Arabia, where he could get away with murder on the pitch if he wanted. That Mitrovic moment was crazy, but if we're talking about players losing it with referees, few cases are as infamous as what happened to Francesco Totti. Francesco Totti versus Byron Moreno. The 2002 World Cup still gives Italian fans nightmares, and Byron Moreno's name is basically cursed in Rome. Italy was up against South Korea in the round of 16, and everyone knew it wasn't going to be easy. But what happened that night was straight-up chaos. Totti, already carrying a yellow, was tackled roughly in the box during extra time. Most of us watching thought, penalty, easy, Italy's through. Instead, Moreno pulled the unthinkable. He gave Totti a second yellow for diving and sent him off. Imagine being told you're cheating when the whole world just saw a clear foul. Totti exploded, storming at the ref, throwing his arms in disbelief and shouting like a man who'd been robbed in broad daylight. And in all honesty, he was. South Korea went on to win, and Italy went home furious. To this day, whenever you talk about bad refereeing, this game comes up and Moreno is at the centre of it. Years later, the ref even got arrested for unrelated shady business, which only made Italians feel even more justified in their outrage. Lionel Messi versus Antonio Mateo Lahoz. Messi rarely blows up at referees. In fact, he rarely blows up at anyone, and he's usually the calmest guy on the pitch, just dribbling and doing his thing. But the quarter-final against the Netherlands in Qatar broke him. Antonio Mateo Lahoz was in charge, and from the first whistle, the game descended into chaos. He handed out 17 yellow cards, players were surrounding him every 5 minutes, and Lahoz looked like he was refereeing a boxing match rather than football. Even Messi couldn't take it. He sarcastically clapped decisions, argued face-to-face with Lahoz, and after the final whistle, he didn't hold back. He went on TV and said FIFA shouldn't let referees like that handle games this big. If Messi, the guy who usually avoids controversy, is openly slamming you, you know you've messed up. The whole match had drama, goals, penalties, fights, everything. But the running subplot was Messi versus Lahoz. And here's the kicker. Lahoz was sent home early from the tournament after that performance. Zlatan Ibrahimovic versus Craig Thompson. If there's one player who was never going to accept a dodgy red card quietly, it's Zlatan Ibrahimovic. In the Champions League last 16, PSG was playing Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, and in the first half, Zlatan collided with Oscar. It was a strong tackle, but Oscar went down like he'd been hit by a truck. Craig Thompson, the referee, immediately reached for red, and that's when the fun started. Chelsea players swarmed Thompson, begging for the card, while Zlatan stood there, looking like he was about to eat someone alive. Later, Zlatan said Chelsea acted like babies, surrounding the ref, which was his way of saying the whole thing was embarrassing. The death stare he gave Thompson on the way off was unforgettable. He wasn't raging, he wasn't begging, he was just silently letting everyone know he thought the game had been turned into theatre. After the match, he doubled down, mocking English football for pretending to be tough, but collapsing under minimal contact. It was pure Zlatan, a mixture of fury, sarcasm, and that trademark self-belief. PSG still went through, but the red card added an extra layer of drama to a tie that already had plenty. And finally, let's talk about Edmundo versus José Aparecido de Oliveira, 1993. Now, if we're talking about pure madness, Brazil in the 90s had a front row seat, and leading the charge was Edmundo, who was nicknamed the Animal for a reason. This guy was chaos personified. I mean, he was ridiculously talented, but he had a temper that could ignite at any second. And in 1993, while playing for Vasco da Gama, he gave us one of the most infamous referee moments in Brazilian football history. In the middle of a heated game, Edmundo completely lost it with referee José Aparecido de Oliveira. He didn't just shout in his face or wave his arms around like most players do. Nope. The guy straight up shoved the referee in the face, full hand to the jaw, on live television, with the whole country watching. The ref staggered back in shock. The players around couldn't believe what they'd just seen, and suddenly the match was less about football and more about Edmundo versus the man in black. The fallout was huge, though. He got slapped with a long suspension, his reputation took a beating, and it cemented this idea that Edmundo wasn't just passionate, he was uncontrollable. Oh, and he wasn't just a wreck on the pitch. Off the pitch, he made headlines for all the wrong reasons too, like in 1995 when he caused a car crash that killed 3 people. And guess what? He was drunk. He avoided serious jail time. But the incident has haunted his legacy ever since. And that's the thing with players versus referees. Sometimes it's a little shove, sometimes it's a full-on meltdown, and sometimes it's a moment that sticks to a player's name forever. Whether it's Bruno moaning, Ronaldo losing the plot, or Edmundo shoving the referee in the face, these clashes sometimes live longer in memory than the actual football being played. So now I'll throw it to you. Who do you think had the wildest run-in with a referee? Drop your pick in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next one.